Welcome back, y'all. V2 of the prediction model is finally up and running, generating good predictions. It's time to put it into action now. What we're going to be doing, since we now have two versions of the model, is showing you percentage chance of winning from both versions of the model. If they agree, instead of betting just a single unit on that fight, we will be upping that to 1.5 units. In the case that they don't agree, because of the viability of V2 of the model, we will be using that from this point forward. It is generating higher quality numbers on average and is more accurate more often. So that's what we'll be using from here on out. Today, we've got predictions for UFC Fight Night Adesanya versus Imavov. First fight on this card is going to be Abdul Karim Al-Sawadi versus Balaji Oki. Both these guys are 29. Balaji is going to have a slight height advantage and a pretty significant reach advantage for 155 pounds. Sawadi has been away for 250 days as opposed to Oki's only 126 days. At our book, this is a true pick'em at minus 110, but both of our models are predicting Oki to win V2 pretty handily at 62.3%. while the original model is floating at 51.45. Next up, we've got Hamdi Abdel Wahab and Jamal Pogues at heavyweight. Hamdi is pretty new. He's only got 3 fights, won all 3 of them, finished them all. His last fight and first fight in the UFC was overturned to a no contest after he failed a drug test. Jamal Pogues has been away for almost exactly a year right now. He is coming in with a very slight height and a pretty significant reach advantage. For this fight, our original model and the current model disagree on who's going to win. You can see that V2 is a lot more confident in Jamal Pogues, while V1 very, very slightly favors Hamdi. In a situation like this, we're going to take the V2 and bet on that. This will just be a single unit bet because the two models do not agree. Moving way down in weight, we'll be at featherweight for this next fight between Bogdan Grad and Lucas Alexander. Again, we have another fighter who's been away for a very significant amount of time. Lucas Alexander has been away for 440 days. The odds on this fight are, as V1 very often does, very, very close. But V2, again, is giving Bogdan Grad a significant edge in this fight at 65.6%. Because the two models agree on who's going to win this fight and Bogdan Grad is a favorite in this fight, we will be betting enough to return 1.5 units on this bout. Our next fight will be the only one in the women's division on this fight card. It's between Jasmine Jasudavicius and Mayra Buena Silva. Silva is definitely the finisher of these two with 7 submissions, where Jasmine is primarily going to decisions, very common for women's 125. Jasmine will also be a slight bit older, coming in with very small reach and very small advantage in height. But what is notable is she's making a pretty quick turnaround at right around 3 months. Despite this, at the books, she's still a minus 220 favorite. And V1 of the model agrees that she should be winning this fight. Although V2 is pointing the other direction to Mayra Buena Silva and a little bit more substantially. V2 does produce better numbers on average from all of the testing I've done. So we will be betting with V2 on this one. We're going to take the underdog Mayra Buena Silva in this case for 1 unit. In the lightweight division, we're going to have Faraz ZM facing off against Mike Davis. Mike is 5 years older coming into this fight, giving up small amount in height and reach. He is the minus 190 favorite at our book, but both V1 and V2 of the model are giving Faraz ZM a substantial chance of winning this fight at 63% and 69% respectively. We're going to be taking Faraz as the underdog here for 1.5 units. The next fight will also be at lightweight between Terrence McKinney and Damir Hadzovic. Demir is 38 years old coming into this fight, much older and definitely on the older side for lightweight. He's also been away from the sport for 924 days. That's a serious amount of time off, especially at his age. And before that, he had only been doing one fight a year for 2019, 2020, 2021. So he's been relatively inactive for many years now. No surprise that the books have Terrence McKinney as a minus 335 favorite here. V1 of the model sees the fight relatively close, but to be honest with you, 59% from that model is pretty significant. It's at least notable, where V2 is given Terrence McKinney 76% chance of winning, very high. Because the two agree, we're betting enough on McKinney here that if he wins, we will return a profit of 1.5 units. The final fight on the prelims will be another heavyweight bout between Shamil Gaziev and Thomas Peterson. Thomas is 29, not necessarily young for the heavyweight division, but definitely a little bit younger. He will be giving up a few inches in both height and reach. They've been away from the sport for a similar amount of time, right around 6 months. The book odds on this fight are very wide compared to what we're seeing from the models. Both of the models are giving right around 55% chance of winning to Shamil Gaziev, where the book odds have him at minus 350. Kicking off the main card will be Muhammad Naimov and Khan Ofli at 145 pounds. These guys very similar in age, very similar in height. Muhammad does have a 4-inch reach advantage and has also been away from the sport for a little bit longer, but not a terribly long time, to be honest. I do not have odds for this fight at my book, so we will not be placing a bet on this fight at all. V1 of the model does favor Naimov pretty substantially, where V2 is giving this exactly a 50-50. If you're feeling frisky, bet a draw at plus 6,000, make some money, I don't know. Next up at middleweight, we have Ikram Aliskerov versus Andre Muniz. Andre's a lot more experienced than Ikram, but he's just too willing to engage in the grappling. I think that Ikram's going to have a big advantage in the clinch and on the ground in this fight. The book odds are very wide at negative 600 for Aliskerov. V1 of the model has him 70.5% to win, while V2 is slightly less confident, coming in just below 60. So we're taking Ikram Aliskerov in this fight to return 1.5 units. The next fight at bantamweight sees Said Nurmagomedov face off against Vinicius Oliveira. All the stats here are very, very similar, with Said being just very slightly older. That dude pulls out of so many fights that it's been 470 days since his last fight. Despite this, the books still have him at a minus 180 favorite, where both of the models disagree, but only very, very slightly. Both models have Oliveira winning this fight at a 51% clip. Who knows? We're taking the underdog here. We've got 1.5 units on it. If you have to bet against anybody with the last name Nurmagomedov, except for last week, this is the guy you bet against. The feature bout on this card is between Sergey Pavlovich and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Sergey is going to be quite a bit longer here, and both of these guys have insane knockout power, so that length really could be a factor in this fight. Sergey is a pretty sizable favorite of minus 260 at the books, and both models have him well over 60% to win. We're going to be taking Sergey here, and I'm pretty happy with that. I don't think Rozenstruik is nearly as good as he looked when he first entered the promotion. Our co-main event for this card is going to be the undefeated Sharabulat Magomedov versus the much more experienced Michael Venom Page at 185 pounds. MVP's starting to get up there in age, although I wouldn't say 37 is necessarily old for a middleweight. He is also going to have a pretty substantial reach advantage of 6 inches. At the books, Sharabulat is a minus 160 V1 is representing something very similar at 56.7%, while V2 seems to believe that we're getting pretty good value on our money at minus 160, coming in at nearly 70% chance of winning for him. And finally, in our main event, we've got Israel Adesanya facing off against Nasruddin Imavov. Izzy has hit quite a skid in his last couple of fights, not been doing so hot lately, while Nasruddin is on a 3-fight run right now. Izzy is going to have a little bit of height, pretty substantial reach, and the books still have him, despite the bad run, as a minus 175 favorite. Both of our prediction models, on the other hand, favor Nasruddin in this fight. V1 pretty substantially at 61.5%, while V2 thinks that this fight is basically a pick'em. So we will be taking Imavov as the underdog in this fight for 1.5 units. To wrap this all up, let's have a look at all of our wagers on this card. There are 13 fights on this card, but one of them, not only did V2 pick the fight to be exactly a 50-50 split, but on top of that, our books do not yet have odds for that fight. So we've only placed 12 wagers. 7 of those were on favorites, 4 on underdogs, and 1 of them was a true pick'em. Our total risk came in at 37.58 units, and our potential win is 63.09 units. If we were to hit everything, we'd profit 25.5 units for a 67.8% ROI. That's all I've got for you this week, but as a little side note, I am starting to optimize V2 of the model for some other promotions. The first one looks like it's going to be PFL and then maybe one championship after that. But if you have any suggestions or promotions that you'd like to see predictions for, please leave them in the comments down below. As always, thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys next week.